Life first landed on my radar by showing up a lot during Steam sales for just 79 cents. That's as cheap as like a pack of ramen or a can of some knockoff soda, but I still might have passed over it if a couple of things hadn't caught my attention. The first was that Still Life is a traditional point-and-click graphic adventure game, which is a genre that I really like. The second was that it was developed by Microids, who made the Siberia games, also point-and-click adventures, and I enjoyed Siberia 1 and 2. This was enough to make me fork over the measly 79 cents, and I'm glad that I did because Still Life is actually a pretty cool game. It was released in 2005 and it's technically the second game in a trilogy, but besides knowing a bit of backstory about one of the protagonists, you don't need to play the first game post-mortem to understand or appreciate Still Life, and it works just fine as a standalone game. You start by taking control of an FBI agent named Victoria McPherson, who's been investigating a series of related murders in Chicago in 2004. The game establishes right away that the plot is a murder mystery, and Victoria is your wisecracking protagonist who likes to make serial killer jokes while standing right next to a mutilated corpse.
Hello, Clarice.
At the opening crime scene, you lead her along as she goes about some typical detective work. Snoop around, take some pictures, collect some evidence, and then head back to the office to read a few reports and bitch about her boss.
I expect a full report on my desk tomorrow morning.
Yes, you would, wouldn't you?
This opening sequence also establishes the game's slow pace, which continues throughout the entire game. You spend time having lengthy conversations with Victoria's partner and the other people she works with. These characters don't have much depth, but they do have personality. The casual banter as they go about their jobs made it feel like a pretty realistic day at work, and it did a decent job at getting me absorbed in the story and setting. But things don't get really interesting until Victoria leaves the office and heads over to her dad's house for a Christmas celebration. While you're here, she comes across her grandfather's old notebook that he used to write his memoir, and once she starts reading, suddenly the game shifts perspectives. And now you're controlling her grandfather, Gus McPherson, in Prague during the 1920s. Still Life is split up into 7 chapters, and they alternate back and forth between Victoria and Gus. As you explore these 2 separate time periods, it becomes obvious that there are striking similarities between the murder case Victoria is investigating and a different case that Gus investigated as a private detective. The mystery of this connection is a major plot device that's meant to pull you along as you progress through the game. Since Still Life is named after an art term, you'd expect the developers to put a lot of focus on the visual design, which they did, and overall it's a very impressive looking game. The pre-rendered backgrounds look great, and despite being done at a pretty low resolution, they still hold up really well today. You visit a decent amount of locations throughout the game, and all of these areas look detailed and well designed. It's very atmospheric, which I think is perfect for a slow-paced adventure. Chicago has a pretty wide variety of places that uses different designs and color schemes to set the tone. The crime scenes are usually dark and moody, which is contrasted by more colorful and relaxing locations like the police station, Victoria's dad's house, and the art gallery. And there are tons of paintings scattered around since they play a big part in the story, and they look really well done too. I liked exploring all the places in Chicago, but my favorite places were the locations you visit during the flashbacks in Prague. Here, things have a much more consistent color scheme and style. Everything has a grungy, gothic look to it, and the washed out colors definitely emphasize the fact that you're in the past. It makes it seem like you're running around in photos in an old scrapbook, which I really liked. Okay, so when it comes to the backgrounds and environments, everything looks really good, but the character models have some issues. If you use a few tweaks though, you can make them look a lot better. There's an anti-aliasing option in the settings menu to smooth things out, but for some reason whenever I turned this on, I got this weird glitch with Victoria's hair. When I forced it on using my graphics card though, this wasn't a problem. There's no way to raise the resolution using in-game settings, but if you use a program like DG Voodoo to do it, this will make the models look a little better too. The most noticeable issue is the lip syncing. If the game runs at over 60 frames per second, they move their mouths like insane jackrabbits, so you need to use a program to limit it to 60 and slow things down. These solutions are pretty simple, but if you don't feel like messing around with fixes and using other programs, then yeah, this will probably be pretty annoying. But that's the unfortunate reality for older games like this that haven't received support over the years. For the most part, as long as you're using these fixes, the models don't look half bad, except for a few occasions when you run into characters that, for some reason, the developers decided to give giant mouths that makes them look like they're auditioning for the next Scream movie. While I'm on the topic of Captain Big Mouth here, I should also mention that the voice acting generally falls into 2 categories: hilariously bad and pretty decent.
Did you ever read any of Granddad's memoirs?
I've read some of them, yes. Did you find something interesting?
Yes, I found his memoir from one of his cases.
Oh, really? Which one?
Why'd he get arrested?
It was some sort of incident with the police. He supposedly punched one, I heard.
So, we have a deal then?
Wait, not so fast.
I'm sorry for what happened. The chain doesn't usually break.
It was funny to see your face, though.
Yo, listen up, mama. A rule is a rule. It'd be my ass if I let y'all in. I thought they'd brief you.
The majority of voices fall into the pretty decent category, and the bad ones are funny, so no major issues here. The cutscenes show their age more than anything else, which isn't helped by the fact that a few of them were intentionally made extra grainy, I guess to try and blend in with the grungy art direction. The last thing I'll mention about the presentation is the soundtrack. A lot of the time there's no music at all, but when there is, it's usually eerie, sinister tracks at crime scenes and during tense moments, which do a good job at giving these parts of the game a creepy vibe. There's also a pretty chill track that plays at Victoria's dad's house, and I'm glad this was here because it helped keep me from going insane while I struggled through one of the puzzles there. Still Life has two types of puzzles. There are item puzzles where you search for, use, examine, or combine items to help you complete what are usually relatively simple tasks, like taking fingerprints off a beer bottle, using a photo to help you find clues in a specific area, or kissing your boss's ass by making him a cup of coffee. I thought most of these were pretty easy or like medium difficulty, but not to the point where they felt overly simple, and there were still a few that I got stuck on for a while. They mostly seemed well designed, and I like that a lot of them make you do detective-related work, because it blends well with the story. But despite this, the actual murder investigations aren't a puzzle, and the game doesn't make you try to deduce who might be a suspect or who might be guilty. Instead, the puzzles usually make you complete the more technical tasks necessary to move the investigation forward, and then the information about the case is given to you in a linear fashion. This isn't a knock on the game or anything, I just thought it's worth mentioning. And it's most obvious when it comes to the other type of puzzles. I don't have a name for them, so I'm just gonna call them the big puzzles, because they take more time to complete. These usually don't have much to do with the actual murders, and instead are major obstacles that block your path to the next clue or piece of info. Most of these are legitimately difficult, and the game definitely doesn't hold your hand to help you figure them out. You can search around and you might find a clue that gives you a vague hint, but there's still no easy way out, and you'll have to use your brain. Thankfully, none of them are illogical or so insane that it seemed like the developers put them there just to piss you off. The solutions always made sense, and even though I definitely got frustrated a few times, they felt very satisfying to complete. The most notorious of these is the cookie baking puzzle, where you have to mix together the right ingredients to bake Victoria's grandmother's special Christmas cookies. Yeah, Still Life is a game that deals with violent, gruesome murders and cookie baking. If you don't have any real-life knowledge about baking, then chances are you're gonna have some trouble here. And even if you do, you still might mess up a bunch of times like I did.
No, this doesn't taste right. No, this doesn't taste right. No, this doesn't no.
I know these kinds of puzzles aren't for everyone. Sometimes you just want to relax and play a game without having to rack your brain to move forward. There's definitely no shame in using a guide if you get stuck, but if you're looking for a satisfying challenge, then Still Life's puzzles definitely offer that. You run into about one or two of these big puzzles per chapter, and there are a couple that are actually a little easier, which kinda threw me off because after struggling through some of the tough ones, I wasn't expecting that. I ended up overthinking one of these, and the solution was a lot simpler than I originally thought. All in all, I think Still Life's puzzles are one of its greatest strengths. They feel like a throwback to some of the tough puzzles in classic point-and-click games from the 90s, and they never go overboard by having irrational or irritating solutions. Okay, so now it's time to talk about the game's story. Still Life starts in the middle of Victoria's murder investigation, and the first victim you encounter is actually the 5th victim. To learn about the previous victims, you need to open your menu and check out some coroner's reports to get the details. None of this has anything to do with the previous game, and the plot just wants to establish that the murderer is a serial killer. Normally, I'm not a fan of having to start a game by reading background info to figure out what's going on, but these were pretty short, so it wasn't that big of a deal. There's also a conversation log and a journal in the menu which can help you keep track of characters and important plot developments. The plot starts out pretty compelling. There are gruesome, graphic murders, a creepy, mysterious villain, and it's made clear that there will be more victims soon if Victoria can't hurry up and figure out who the killer is. The dialogue, for the most part, is pretty believable, but it took me some time to get used to Victoria's sense of humor. Initially, it was a little strange to hear her joke so much about such serious circumstances, but when you stop and think about it, it's actually kind of fitting. As an FBI agent who's constantly dealing with danger and terrible crimes, it makes sense that she'd be desensitized to this kind of stuff. And humor is probably a good way to keep yourself sane when you spend all day staring at dead bodies and hunting down murderers. Some of her jokes are better than others, and occasionally she'll even acknowledge when she makes a bad one.
I could see if I had some metachlorians in my blood. My god, that was weak.
Overall, I'd say that her personality does do a good job at making her a likable character, but she is kind of one-dimensional. The game never tries to fill in much information about her past, or add in much else about her life that isn't directly related to the investigation. She has a boyfriend she visits at an art gallery a few times, but they don't interact much, and besides this, she's just the FBI lady whose only other desire in life is to sit in a bathtub and drink wine. Okay, maybe that doesn't sound too bad, but what's weird about it is that Gus is basically the complete opposite. He doesn't really have much personality at all. He rarely ever jokes, and he speaks with a more monotonous voice, but he is a more interesting character. Right when you first meet him, you find out that before coming to Prague, he was living in Paris trying to become a painter. He occasionally has psychic visions, and he's investigating the murders as a favor to his girlfriend, who he finds out is pregnant, and he ends up proposing to her. There's just more depth to him, and I feel like if you had combined some of Gus and Victoria's qualities, then you would have had a really good character. The game doesn't have a giant cast of characters, so you interact with a lot of the same people, but a lot of the conversations were fun because some characters have amusing quirks, and some are unintentionally funny, thanks to awkward deliveries.
Okay, please. Can't breathe. Let go of him, Peter. You're hurting him. I wanted to say thank you.
You're welcome.
Then just say thank you. Thank you.
On not-so-good days, my friend, whom you've already met, becomes a thief to help me make ends meet. On bad days, I'm merely reduced to being a homeless bum.
Hello? Sir?
Hello?
Huh? What are you doing here? I thought I'd locked the door. So where is my cone? What are you trying to do? Give me a heart attack?
The mystery of who the killers are in both Chicago and Prague, and the connection between them, actually kept me curious throughout pretty much the entire game. There's always a new clue dangled in front of you or a major development like a new murder victim, so that there weren't really any dull parts of the story. But the story isn't perfect, and there were a few things that really irritated me. I'll try not to give away too much, but there are a couple of spoilers ahead, so if you want to skip them, you can go here. At one of the crime scenes, the killer leaves a note on the back of a picture that literally tells Victoria who his next victim is gonna be, and it's a character that you know. So obviously you'd expect the FBI to give this person some kind of protection, right? At the very least, assign a local cop to keep an eye on her. But what do they do instead? Victoria has her boyfriend Richard look after her while he's working the front desk at an art gallery. What is this guy gonna do if the killer shows up? Beat him over the head with a paintbrush? To make things worse, they just let her leave after a while, and she goes back to her apartment all by herself. And then, just like he promised, the killer shows up and everyone acts like they didn't know exactly what was gonna happen. It's a major plot hole that makes basically no sense, and they should have found a better way to move the plot forward here. Another part I didn't like involves Victoria's coworker Claire. During some of the early parts of the game, Claire brings up her deteriorating relationship with her daughter during conversations with Victoria, and they make it seem like it's a big deal. I thought this was part of an important subplot or something, but then later on, Claire tells Victoria that they can't discuss it anymore, and it never gets brought up again. Claire stays pretty cryptic about the situation, so I don't think it really added much to her character, and the whole thing seemed pretty random and pointless. The story also has a disappointing ending. I thought the conclusion of the Prague plotline was actually really well done, but the Chicago plotline ends with a major cliffhanger that's supposed to get resolved in the sequel. There is at least some sense of resolution with how the investigation plays out, so I didn't feel completely let down by it, but I still think it's lame that you're left in the dark about things that you spend literally the entire game wondering about. Even with the couple of gripes I have about its story, I think Still Life is a solid adventure game. Its well-designed puzzles are tough and rewarding, and it has an atmosphere and art style that makes exploring and investigating an engrossing experience. The dialogue and humor make the story unfold in a relatively entertaining way, and even though it occasionally descends into the realm of goofiness, it's good enough to make you laugh without being too cheesy. It's not a very long game. You can finish it in about 10 to 12 hours, but since it's so cheap, that's hardly something to complain about. And if you're a fan of old school point-and-click adventure games, I think it's definitely worth a try.